Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Marc Noyce, and he's an urban food specialist, and the topic we'll be discussing is the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. So Marc, what are the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden?
The joys of urban gardening are multiple. There are so many joys of urban gardening, which include your own nutrition, your mental health, contacting and being in contact with your friends and reconnecting with your family that you haven't seen, your long lost aunt that you haven't seen for a while. Urban gardening just gives you that excuse to knock on the door and say, hey, I've got some food. Would you like to share a meal with me? I grew this in my own garden. One plant that I grew can actually benefit 5 or 6 other families. It's amazing when you value add. Chilies, for example, you can grow your own chilies, and these small plants that you can grow in a very small space go a long way. And that's one of the things about being able to give, being able to look after something, looking after your own nutrition, looking after your friends and family. And that's really what the joys of urban farming is about. It's also about knowing where my food comes from. Growing your own food, you know what went into it, you watched it grow, you watched it mature, and then you know exactly where that food comes from. So that gives a sense of self-satisfaction. It also gets a sense of pride that I did something for myself. And not only that, it's fun. It is just fun to come home and see your garden. Like sometimes I talk to my plants. After a long day, I go out there and I say, hey plants, how are you going? And they seem happy to see me because if you give them the right things in terms of sunlight, water, food, they look after themselves, okay? And then they give back a healthy, nutritious food plant. So not only can we have individuals growing food, we can actually have communities growing food. And I get involved in schools, I get involved in community gardens, and where from nothing, a community comes together, and sometimes people are quite isolated and they don't have any friends, they don't have any family nearby, and they're living in a very small space. So to be able to come to a urban farm and meet people, share food and share stories of how to grow food and tips and tricks. Schools are absolutely fantastic mechanisms to get young people into urban farming. Learning from the ground up how to look after yourself, how to look after others, from growing your own food at home and getting in contact with your food and learning about where your food comes from is just setting up a whole next level, next generation of urban farmers to be self-sufficient.
Marc, I live in a small urban environment. How can I overcome some of those challenges in creating my garden?
In cities, we live in a concrete jungle. Sometimes there's not a lot of space, sometimes there's not a lot of light, and we're busy too. So sometimes we don't have a lot of time to give to our plants. So these are real challenges. Wind's a really big problem in urban environments. It can get very windy. There are stray pets, there are bugs, there are things that want to eat all our produce. It seems like everything's against us in an urban environment. But these challenges can be overcome when you have the right technology, when you have the right approach, when you get your nutrition right for your plants, when you get the watering right, and if you can get your plants to self-water, if you can get your compost, you can close your nutrient loop by composting your own green waste at home, turning that into a resource for plants to grow, and closing our nutrient loop is really a great way of being self-sufficient and overcoming these challenges that cities have where our food waste is a one-way street. We can turn that around. Cities also have abundant stormwater or rainwater runoff, so we have an abundance of water, we have an abundance of nutrition in terms of food waste. We can turn those around in an urban environment to grow healthy, nutritious food. And we can do it in really small spaces.
What are some top tricks and tricks for our audience to create their own urban gardens?
It depends on what you're going to grow. So if you want to grow tomatoes, for example, they need a lot of sunlight. They need like up to 10 hours of sunlight a day. If you want to grow lettuce and herbs, well, some of these plants can survive and thrive, if you like, on only 4 hours of sunlight. So it really depends on where your balcony's placed, where your sunlight comes in, and what you want to grow. So knowing a little bit about the types of plants you want to grow really helps set up where you need to put them, helps set up your urban farm in terms of what produce you're going to get out, and you can grow a lot of food in a very small space. In some cases you can grow up to 25 kilos worth of food in just 1 square metre, which is amazing. So if you think about what an average person would consume in Australia, and that's 75 kilos of vegetables per annum. We should eat 150, but only 5% of Australians get to 150 kilograms of food, vegetable matter per annum. So we can get our average food consumption in only 3 square metres, which is amazing. So a tip would be find a space that's relatively sunny. Try to protect your plants from the wind as much as possible with either netting, and get yourself a wicking garden bed. Now, if you don't know a wicking garden bed, if you've ever put a dishcloth into the water, you see the water rise up out of the water up the dishcloth. Well, that's wicking. That is capillary action. So that's what draws water up from a water reservoir. And a wicking garden bed allows you to have a self-watering pot plant that has a water reservoir that is always making water available to the plants. And so if a plant has access to water whenever it needs it, it's going to be optimal, it's going to reach its full potential, and you're going to have a healthier garden every single time. Get the other things right in terms of soil nutrition, which is a high quality compost, something very fibrous to help draw that water up out of your wicking garden bed or your self-watering pot plant, and your plant will be as healthy as it possibly can. Get the right nutrition into the compost, and it'll have all the trace elements that it needs. So a good quality potting mix is essential. You can make your own potting mix by composting at home, taking your green waste and turning that into a nutritious source of food for your plants. And technology's come a long way with wicking garden beds these days. So you can have free draining and wicking in some of these systems, which is optimal.
Thanks, Marc. That's such good, useful information. If you'd like to know more about Marc Noyce and the benefits of creating your own urban garden bed, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, breathwork expert and life coach Christine Hart-Savage will be talking about overcoming anxiety. Welcome back. We have breathwork and life coach Christine Hart-Savage here today, and today we'll be discussing overcoming anxiety. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
We know, Christine, that lots of people suffer from anxiety. What is anxiety?
It's an interesting topic, anxiety, because often when you're suffering from anxiety, you don't realise it's anxiety. You just feel not right. And there's a type of fear that comes with anxiety. It depends on how serious it is. Anxiety can be it's like, put it this way, it's like, for me, a river that runs always in the background. And some days that river rises up and becomes really full and powerful, and other times it settles down a bit, but it's always running in the background. It's always this level of discomfort. And in that discomfort is fear, like there's a fear. And when it's really strong, it's terror, it's dread. And that's when I used to think, oh my God, I'd rather die than be experiencing this. It's quite quite strong. It's a horrible thing, anxiety. It's horrible. So if anyone's really out there suffering from this, there are things you can do. But you know, I think, Megan, the thing that is great these days is there is help out there. There's help everywhere for anxiety, like it's recognised. But when I was first suffering from it, it wasn't recognised. You hid it. It was something that if you were stressed, that was fine. You could have stress. But if you were anxious, you couldn't tell anybody because it was taboo, anxiety. So now it's different. It's like, yes, I have anxiety, and people understand it a lot better. But the symptoms that I had were this feeling of, if you imagine a whole group of butterflies or moths, it's probably more like moths than butterflies, and they're all flapping together and they're all banging into each other in your solar plexus, like your stomach area. And then this fear starts to take you over. And then you start to have thoughts of dread, fearful thoughts, worry thoughts, and you just feel yourself contracting in, and it's really powerful, and it literally takes you over, completely takes you over.
The way you describe it, it sounds like you've experienced it yourself.
Most definitely. I've had really chronic anxiety in my life, and that's what took me into the pathway that I work in. It was through this anxiety, and it can be so incredibly strong that you can start to have panic attacks, and a lot of people do have panic attacks, and mine became so severe that, I don't know if you know the term tetany, but tetany is where your body freezes up, and I would end up laying on the floor going not able to breathe, and just like I was completely paralysed by the fear of anxiety. And of course, it's a catch-22, because then when I was thinking I was going to do something that brought anxiety to me, or I felt anxiety, like public speaking, I would never in a million years have thought I would be public speaking like I do these days. I couldn't speak up. I couldn't find my voice. So if I had to do something that put me in a situation where I felt fear, then I would have terror of having a panic attack, and that would create the panic attack. So it's a catch-22. You have this panic about panicking, and on it goes. And it's something that is there 24/7, like every single day. It's a horrible thing. I can laugh about it now, but it is a very serious condition, and it can stop people from doing anything. You know, it can keep you at home, too scared to step outside and live your life. And the dreams that we have, that we want to achieve in our lives, it can stop you from even taking one step towards that dream because you freeze up. I can't do this, I can't do this. Maybe people will laugh at me, maybe I'll make a fool of myself. And we can get through that, where these days I think if I make a fool of myself, oh well, it doesn't matter. But I've been on a real journey with this, with anxiety.
Christine, is there anything you would recommend for our viewers to take away from this?
Oh, yes. Firstly, when you're feeling anxious, just take a step back. And again, my favourite thing, the anchor is your breath. Through the nose, always through the nose, in through the nose, out through the nose. Settle yourself. Give yourself permission to step back and just slow down. And it's probably a hard thing to do for people when you're in anxiety, but really look at the thought processes you're going through as well, because your thoughts will be going nuts. They will be telling you every negative thing that could happen. So we need to, when we, put it this way, when we breathe, we can slow the thought processes down as well. So again, one of the biggest things I did for anxiety was learn to meditate. And that slows everything down. And when you feel the anxiety building up again, if you didn't do something or have a skill like meditation, you can't bring it back down again. So if you meditate once a day or twice a day, if the anxiety is building and you meditate, it brings it down so that you're balanced again, and then you can go back out into the world. I've got a quick story. Have you got time for a quick story?
Yeah.
I don't know where I heard this or where it came from, but there was this story about this young boy that was born into a family, a large family, and he was chosen to become a monk. And he did not want to be a monk. Anyway, he was taken to this place and the abbot sat down and spoke to him in this monastery. And he said, "Sit down, my son." And he said, "Okay, I'm sitting down, but I am standing on the inside." And then one day the abbot was out and about and he happened to notice this young boy walking up the passageway towards him, and he thought, this is this young man. And he stopped and he spoke to him and he said, "I see you are standing on the outside, but now you are sitting on the inside." That is what meditation can do for you. That's what it's done for me. That's why I love to teach people meditation.
Oh, what a brilliant story, Christine. If you'd like to know more about overcoming anxiety and Christine, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. After the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
After the break, lymphologist Sean Connell is talking about fighting inflammation, so stay tuned. Welcome back, and next we have Sean Connell, our lymphologist, who's back with us today to talk about fighting inflammation. So Sean, welcome back.
Thank you.
And inflammation. So how is inflammation caused in the first place?
Well, the inflammation actually comes from our bloodstream, because our bloodstream's 91% water. So when we break the laws mentally, nutritionally or physically, it's going to cause more inflammation in the body. So this is why stress is the biggest killer. So when we stress, it opens up the capillaries of the pores of the capillaries, and too much of the water comes out. So if there's too much there, sometimes the lymphatic system can't remove that inflammation. So we need to help the lymphatic system to actually remove that excess fluid out of the area of around the cells. So that's where a lymphologist and lymphatic drainage massage can come in handy, because we will activate that lymphatic system using the only 4 ways to activate it and move that inflammation out of the area. Then the oxygen and nutrition can get back into that area and the cells can start to regenerate and heal. And then the white blood cells, the immune system can work and the body can regenerate and heal itself.
Right. And so when you say it and what it does to our body, what does it do to our body?
Technically, inflammation's causing lack of oxygen. So without oxygen, we don't live very long. So luckily, we have up to 100 trillion cells in our body. So there's inflammation around that area. They'll start to break down and degenerate. So the sooner we can remove that inflammation out of there, those cells can start to regenerate and work the way they're supposed to.
So what other contributors would you say there are towards inflammation within us that can deplete our oxygen supplies?
Okay. So mentally, stress is the biggest killer. Getting angry. If you have an argument with someone, you're tired after that burst because you've created inflammation in your body and it's created lack of oxygen, and then you're tired. Eating and drinking the wrong things. So everything in moderation, so not too much coffee or alcohol or processed foods. Go natural as much as possible. Improper exercise will cause lactic acid in the body as well. All those things will cause inflammation, and if the lymphatic system's not removing that, it'll start to degenerate and cause the body to break down.
So when you talk about the generalisation, do you have a particular example of a situation where someone's been affected with the lymphatic system with the inflammation?
Yeah, well, inflammation's the cause of every problem out there. So without oxygen, we don't live very long. So oxygen is the key. And if there's inflammation in that part of the body, no oxygen's getting there. So it's going to degenerate, break down and die. So we need to remove that inflammation. The only way is through the lymphatic system, and that'll create more energy and more oxygen in that area. We have a lot of people who have lymphedema, which is just the body's just blowing up, just with inflammation. So we naturally just activate the lymphatic system and greatly reduce that, and then allow more oxygen to get back into that area, and then the body can start to regenerate and heal itself, and they lose a lot of weight, because over 50 kilos you can hold of just inflammation in the body.
Is that true for anybody who has that sort of swelling in their body, or are there just certain situations where it...
Yeah, if anything goes wrong in the body, all that's happening is there's inflammation in that area, and the lymphatic system's not working in that area. So once you activate the lymphatic system in that area, you're going to get more oxygen, more nutrition in there, and the cells in the body can start to regenerate and heal itself. So what's causing the lymphedema and the inflammation in the body is we have blood proteins in our bloodstream. And now their goal is to keep the water in the bloodstream. But as I said before, when we break the laws mentally, nutritionally or physically, these proteins come out much more than they should, and they pull a lot of that inflammation, the water, out of the bloodstream. And that's what's causing the inflammation in the body. So the only way to remove that inflammation is by activating the lymphatic system, removing those blood proteins back to the bloodstream, keeping the water in the bloodstream.
And then when you're saying those four systems, also the technology that you've mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that technology sort of widely available?
Not many people know about it. It's not that widely. There's some doctors around the world using it, but it's very unknown.
Well, and how would you say, what would your best advice for our viewers be around fighting inflammation?
Well, the number one thing we have to do is activate the lymphatic system. As we said before, there's 4 ways to activate the lymphatic system: deep breathing, bouncing, stroking, energy. You're required to get 30 minutes of aerobic exercise every day. Walking, do your deep breathing while you're walking, or if you're with someone, you're talking. So you're doing the breathing naturally by just talking. So don't be the one that's just not talking, talk as well. So obviously see professionals out there, they're the experts in the field, so they'll do that. But at home, you got your deep breathing, bouncing, stroking, energy. You can do all these things at home to help activate that lymphatic system. But professionals out there have technology now that's way out of this world that really, really activates the lymphatic system, move a lot of that inflammation. You're going to drop a lot of weight, you're going to have more energy, your body's going to work the way it's supposed to, it's going to regenerate, you're going to get younger, you're going to feel really, really good.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. And for more information on Sean Connell and fighting inflammation, then please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and we'll say bye for now and see you next week. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.